do what I do for God. And if I am convinced that what I have done and how I've done it is how He would have me to do it, and that He's pleased with me, then that needs to be it. That needs to be all we're concerned about. And that's a sort of radical way of doing things, but I think it's a necessary way, because so many people will talk to me, and I feel the same thing. You do your best to present the truth of God. You do your best to give a defense for the faith that's once delivered to the saints, and yet there are just so many countering voices from a bewildering number of directions and perspectives that sometimes you just feel like it's not even worth doing this. And from certain theological perspectives, if you don't believe that God is sovereignly ordaining what takes place and that He has a purpose in these things, I don't know why, honestly, a lot of people would continue on doing what they do in light of how difficult it is. I remember when we first started going to PRBC, Pastor Fry had a phrase that he would use. We'd even pray it, break the teeth of the false teachers. That's a good Psalms reference. And shut their mouths. This is a prayer. Shut the mouths of the false teachers. Well, that is something to pray for, because when there are people looking for reasons to disbelieve, you'll always have false teachers who will come along and give them a reason to disbelieve, and that is extremely frustrating. So, one of the first things I would say today, even before we get started looking at this material, it is extremely important, I think, to put down a stake, a place where it's going to give you a central focus. Why do we do what we do? And when you see someone come along and just start throwing out all sorts of citations from, and the citations are from a worldview that is inconsistent and all the rest of this stuff, but you don't always have the opportunity of providing a full refutation, or you see them succeeding in blinding people, succeeding in throwing stumbling blocks in the progress of the gospel. If you think that's up to you, and if you think that it's all our effort, then you're gonna become so frustrated you're gonna end up doing something else in your life. But it's a little bit like something we learned the hard way in doing street ministry out at the temple or up in Salt Lake City or whatever. And that is, there are many, many, many of those tracts which we had printed and folded and put in boxes and carried around in our bags and given out to people that simply got thrown away, torn up, spit upon, whatever. And we'd find them laying on the ground, trampled under the feet of men. And I don't know who first came up with it. I think I did, but it could have been somebody else. I don't know. We called them fallen warriors. And we had to recognize that the truth of God goes out for salvation and for condemnation, both. And that God is glorified in either one. And that when you have false teachers, when you have people who are perverting the truth, when you have people who are twisting the truth, when you have people that will utilize people who've become compromised in their theology to blunt the truth of the gospel, the people misusing those sources will be held accountable for what they did. Those who are false teaching within the church will be held accountable for what they do. You're simply held accountable to honor God and to do what's right. And if His approbation and His approval is all you care about, then you'll be fine. You will be able to press on in the midst of an ever more challenging and even crushing situation. And so, important to keep that in mind, I think, right at the beginning. as far as what we're saying here. Now, to our subject today. A couple weeks ago, Dr. Mike Licona appeared on Jonathan McClatchy's webinar, which he does regularly each weekend. And we're going to be looking at three different topics that the Muslims also attending the webinar found to be quite fascinating and have attempted, we have some yah snow jobs here, and nothing new about that. But I've attempted to say, well, there's all sorts of contradictions here. Well, on one level, there is, because folks who are actually concerned about understanding what we're saying, not just twisting what we're saying, have known for a very long time. I don't remember how long ago it was, but we have played on this program Mike Licona's interaction with Shabir Ali, with Bart Ehrman, and while we've normally been criticizing Shabir Ali and Bart Ehrman, there were times we played things that Mike Licona said, and we said, not quite. Same thing with William Lane Craig. When he made original sin, some said, oh, well, it's not really central to any Christian belief or anything like that. We responded to these things. We have been consistent, and of course there are those that, you just attack other Christians. Well, there's a really a fundamental difference in approach, which once again recognizes and flows from a fundamental difference in theology. And we believe that your theology should determine your apologetics, not the other way around. And so, in general, what you're going to discover is that strong biblical monergists are going to view things quite differently than synergists do. And that's going to end up showing itself, especially, well, obviously in discussions of salvation, things like that, but in other areas as well. Furthermore, I've said many times that unless you have the highest view of Scripture, there's no reason for you to be a Calvinist. Look at any Presbyterian denomination, any at one time Reformed denomination that abandoned its foundation in having the highest view of Scripture as the very words of God.